Hi everyone, and welcome to my review of Jesse Dylan's American Wedding in 2003. Another American Pie film that I watched today actually, in the day, and I watched Lights Out tonight, and they'll both be up soon of course. I don't know which one I'll be uploading first, but this is the one of course. It's not too acclaimed, but it's one of the sequels to American Pie, which I've reviewed. And yeah, I think that American Pie is the best American Pie film, the first one. But this one, of course, the clue's in the name. There is a wedding, and yes, it's Jim and Michelle that get married in this film. And it basically, it's set a couple of years after, I think, again, of, the previous one. And, I was a bit disappointed with two, to be honest, overall, and it wasn't quite, worthy of the first one. I think it lacked a lot of drama and it lacked a lot of character development, and the comedy at times just didn't work for me. It's definitely the weakest of the four, proper American Pie films. I'm not talking about the other ones, and I won't be reviewing them probably. But yes, this one, again, really liked it as a kid, and I still really like it. I think this one's definitely good, better than two. It's not as good as one. I don't think that. And it's got some flaws and stuff. But yes, its basic plot is, of course, Jim and Michelle. Very early on in the film, he proposes to her, and basically the film is about their planning the wedding, and of course all the other quite a lot of the characters return. Oz is missing from this film, which is a shame because he's probably at times my favourite character. In American Pie, and Heather's not in it as well, so you've not got that. Quite a few of the other characters as well, Jessica, Sherman, all them ones. But you've got the return of the kind of the MILF guys, the ones that keep saying the MILF, and the ones, and they're in it, and of course Kevin's in the film, Stifler, of course Jim is back, and Jim's dad, so there's quite a lot of the regulars. It's also got Michelle's parents, and basically, some stuff that happens in this film, of course, is you've got, Stifler, causes a lot of problems in the film. You've got like a rivalry between Paul Finch and Stifler, and Sean William Scott, I think, is probably at his best, in this film. I think that Stifler was the most entertaining that he's been probably throughout all of them. And Finch unfortunately wasn't as good, but we'll get to that. But yeah, you've got that, and of course you've got Jim meeting Michelle's parents, and of course things developing with all the different relationships throughout the film, and then of course the actual wedding itself. So yeah, it's it has got flaws, but I think that this one definitely brings back the heart that the first one had, and also it does have actual character development, and an actual story that a plot that holds it together and stops it from just going into comedy sketches that kind of halt the narrative, and as well it just I think that the second one at times got a bit flat. This one doesn't really, but yes, it's I think the opening scene is much better as well. It does something different, of course, and it's kind of deals with how far they've come, and it kind of makes the point that they've got to grow up and everything like that. Of course, the stuff where Stifler kind of gets shoehorned and stuff, and at first they don't want him to actually be part of the wedding. But of course, eventually he starts helping Jim with dancing lessons and stuff like that. So you've got loads of different things going on, and a lot of the time it's handled really, really well. I think once again it's more sincere, like the first one was. It's got that charm and that warmth to it as well. I think the soundtrack's really good as well. It's probably got the best score to the film out of all of them, and it's very, very touching at times. Some really good comedy. I think that there is a couple of times where the comedy doesn't quite perfectly land. It goes a bit too far, and of course you've got Michelle's sister that comes into it, and the character of Cadence, played by Jenny Jones. She's probably one of the weakest characters that comes into this film. I feel that what goes on with her is it's a bit annoying at times. It does add for some comedy, and it does allow Stifler to kind of develop in some ways and add some interesting dynamics to the film. But really, she's a character that kind of basically just flips between Paul Finch and Stifler, because basically they've got this rivalry going on, and they both try and compete to win her over, basically. And at times it worked, other times it gets a bit poor taste, and I think it ruins Paul Finch's character for most of the film, actually, unfortunately. And he was great in the first two, and it was a very, very unique character, very likable, and really completely different. He acts really out of character, and he becomes just very, very unlikable when he basically tries to when he goes against Stifler. And it doesn't seem like this way for Stifler. He doesn't. He doesn't turn into someone who's unlikable, and it just becomes a bit malicious, and just it just goes a bit over the top. The performance of Paul Finch, and the character I just didn't care for him. He does redeem himself a bit at the end, but generally he's not that enjoyable throughout the film. So there's a con. As well, Michelle is never been my favourite character, and of course a lot of the film focuses on her and Jim. Some of it is very, very nice. Very warm, but it is Michelle, and she's a lot better than she was in the previous two. She's still a character though that I don't really like too much, and she's a bit annoying at times. And Jim is still likable, and there's a lot of stuff that's quite meaningful that happens with him and his dad. But generally, I still don't think he's as good as he was in the first one. But by a long shot. Eugene Levy though, he of course he's back. It wouldn't be American Pie without him. And he's great again. Very, very funny stuff that goes on with him. And again, another tender moments with him and Jim. Actually him and Michelle, there's quite a really good scene there. Michelle picked up as well before, towards the end of the film. And you've got some really great comedy scenes on her own as well. The kind of the bit in the nightclub where there's that dance off. I really like that scene. It could have been done really, really badly. But it was a great scene, and the guy that helps them do that kind of stripper thing. He was really great in this film. He was one of my favourite characters, actually. And that dance off was just great. I think it was really well put together. Really, really funny stuff. Stifler and him, the way they played off against each other, and the choice of songs, it was really, really, really good, well thought out. And of course, it kind of was, pivotal to the actual story and the progression of it. Unlike 2, where there's a lot of sequences where it's comedy and stuff, but never really goes anywhere. It's just, it's because they've not really got too much going on in the actual film narrative. So yeah, and I think that this definitely does all the comedy better than 2, and it actually has a purpose as well to the narrative. And of course, you've just got many scenes that are really, really funny. Of course, Jim's grandmother as well comes into the film, and she's really funny. Generally, I think that Michelle's parents as well are really good in this film. Love the performances, and really, really funny situations that arise there. Of course, the stripper scene is really, really good, and this wasn't the uncut version that I watched. I think that's actually better for that scene. I just watched this on Sky, and it wasn't the uncut one, but I have seen that one. But that scene, regardless of what one you watch, it is really good. It's better on the uncut one. And just many sustained comedy sequences that are really, really good and actually have a purpose as well. And I think as well, there's the character transformation of Stifler, of Jim as well. And Kevin in this film, I would say he's not, he's not like he was in the first one where he's really unlikable. But actually, I noticed this time around again, watching it again, that he's not really, Thomas Ian Nicholas, the actor plays him. It seemed like he was a better actor in this, but the character wasn't really prevalent at all. He was kind of reduced to a background character. He didn't really have too much to say or do. I didn't notice that before. But he's just kind of there, and that was weird. I was a bit disappointed. But his performance is good and stuff, and the very little dialogue that he does have is good. He's not got Vicky there to kind of ruin things and make his storyline, crap, but he's just not really got much of a storyline. He's not really got much to do. But I think that most of the characters are really, really good in this film. I think there's loads of comedy. Really good comedy. I think that there's a lot of warmth and heart to the film. I love the actual wedding, of course, as well. And I think it's just really, really well done for the most part. The ways that Stifler kind of is always kind of doing things wrong. It does get a bit out of hand at times, and it kind of seems like they're just bullying him, and it's not done in any meaningful way. Really, it's just done in a bit of a heavy-handed way. The characters, Jim and stuff, and it just makes him a bit more unlikable. But that's only small moments in the film. I think it does have some other flaws. As I've said, some of the newcomers aren't that great. Michelle's sister is not good in this film. I didn't really like a lot of the stuff that went on there. And some of the stuff it is just a bit basic, and stuff like that. As well, the actual the script, is good at times. Other times it does have some flaws. And generally, I think this is a good film. I think it's got some really good moments, and it's got a lot of warmth and stuff. But it's still nowhere near really as good as the first. And it has got some comedy that doesn't quite work, and it's also got some characters and storylines that they don't quite land for me. They're just a bit annoying, and I think this is still a good film. Definitely more worthy, a more worthy sequel to the first. But I think the first is a really good film. Really did enjoy that a lot. I loved it overall for what it was, and this one I do like at times, really like. But it has got a lot more flaws, and it's just there's some things, like, as I said, that don't quite work really for me. But it is kind of a satisfying in many areas conclusion to this kind of trilogy. Of course, Reunion came almost a decade later, and we'll review that fairly soon. I'll be reviewing that in maybe a few days, and I can see my thoughts on that. I don't know if I'll be doing a ranking. I tend to do rankings more when it's 5 films or more, say of a director or a franchise. Maybe I'll do a ranking for these 4 films, but 4 films, is it really necessary to do a ranking? Who knows? I may do if you request it in the comments. If you want to just see that overall summary and comparison, yeah, of course I'll do it. But unless it is requested, I don't think I will do it. Yeah, but I think I'd have to give this film a 73%. I think it is a good film. I really enjoyed it for the most part. It's got a lot of returns of a lot of things that the first one had. The more warm feel, the actual narrative. In that sense, quite strong. There's a couple of as well. There's a couple bits that are a bit generic. That's another thing I forgot to mention. The cinematography is worse, I feel, than the other two. There's a lot of unnecessary shaky cam. It's just not necessary, and it just doesn't have that charm to the cinematography. The feel, the first one and even 2 at times had, and I think some of the color tones are a bit off, and just some of the editing is not, great. But it's decent cinematography and stuff, but that does let it down a bit as well. And yeah, but it's really well directed at times, and it's really good what they do with this film. And it's kind of like an end of an era at times. You feel that in the film, and of course there's a lot of character development compared to the second one, and it's still a really, really enjoyable film. I think it's a good film, and yeah, just a very, very worthy sequel. And yeah, I think there's, as I said, some things don't work, but generally quite a lot of the film does really work, and it has some comedy at times that just doesn't quite land, and some storylines that don't quite work, and of course it's just, I don't think any of the American Pies are great, but yes, no, I think that the American Wedding is a good film, and highly recommend it if you've not seen it. And yeah, I like all the trilogy, the original trilogy, and I like a Reunion as well. The others, give them a miss, they're pretty terrible, the spin-offs. But yeah, I'll be reviewing Reunion next. So thanks for watching my review of American Wed.